Environmental pollution stands as one of the most pressing and controversial issues of our time. It has long transcended the boundaries of a purely ecological concern, evolving into a global challenge for all of humanity. For many years, this menace has loomed over us, manifesting its destructive power in various corners of the planet. Today, in certain regions, it has escalated to a full-blown crisis, leaving behind indelible scars on both human lives and fragile natural ecosystems. Despite numerous warnings and appeals from international organizations, tangible preventative measures often remain elusive or come too late. While these endeavors aim to mitigate the damage, they frequently prove insufficient to avert catastrophic consequences. They merely temper the effects without eradicating the root causes. This situation gives rise to a pertinent question. If the progress so ardently pursued by humanity and its technological advancements ultimately leads to the destruction of the world we inhabit, is it truly worth it? Reflecting on this, one might consider the example of Linfen, a city often referred to as the Grey Heart of China, nestled in the southwestern part of Shaanxi province. This city, tucked away in the country's interior, quietly sprawls along the lower reaches of the Fen River and once stood as a vital center of Chinese civilization. However, today, Linfen is more widely recognized as a grim symbol of the ecological disaster unfolding within its borders. It is encircled by towering mountains on nearly all sides, forming a natural basin where pollution and toxic substances stagnate. This topography acts like a lid, sealing in a cauldron of noxious waste and harmful emissions. To the east of the city, jagged mountain ranges stretch skyward, their peaks often exceeding 3,280 feet above sea level. On the western side, the land gently slopes down towards the majestic Yellow River, which nourishes the region. Towering above all is Mount Huo, reaching over 7,546 feet, serving as a distinctive landmark within this mountainous terrain. The lowest point in the region, located in the southern part of the basin, sits at an elevation just above 1,246 feet. Waterways, formed by the Fen River and its numerous tributaries, create a dense network of aquatic arteries that flow into the Yellow River. However, this network does little to allow toxic substances to escape the valley, trapping harmful emissions within the region. The climate in Linfen is characterized by semi-arid continentality, shaped by monsoons, which only exacerbates the pollution problem. Winters are long and dry, while summers are hot and stifling. The average annual rainfall is approximately 19 7/10 inches, with the majority falling between June and September. During the summer months, temperatures frequently exceed 104 degrees Fahrenheit, while in winter they can plummet below -4 degrees Fahrenheit. These extreme temperature fluctuations, combined with stagnant air and dense construction, create ideal conditions for the accumulation of harmful substances and pollutants. A critical turning point arrived in the 1990s, when China's rapid development and its modernization policies spurred a sharp increase in demand for coal and other fossil fuels. This process coincided with the commencement of a flurry of private mining operations scattered across the hills, often conducted without proper oversight and with minimal regard for environmental safety. This era marked the transformation of Linfen into a hub of uncontrolled industrialization and pollution. The city slowly, but surely, began to suffocate under its own success. Its air became thick with smoke and noxious fumes. Shrouded in the shadow of coal and steel, nestled on its outskirts, the city became a cautionary tale for all who contemplate the consequences of unchecked industrial growth. In the early 2000s, the situation deteriorated further. Mines, metallurgical plants, and heavy industries encroached upon virtually all of the city's outskirts, scarring the landscape and poisoning the atmosphere. Faced with growing public discontent and the population's desire for an improved environmental situation, authorities were compelled to initiate concrete measures aimed at addressing the consequences of the industrial and ecological crisis. First and foremost, numerous mines that had previously operated in the region were shut down, and the entry of trucks transporting coal was prohibited. This step formed part of a broader effort to transition to more environmentally friendly energy sources, particularly evident in the mass conversion of domestic heating systems from coal to natural gas. As a result of these reforms, nearly 200 large industrial boilers used for energy production and heating were dismantled, along with over 600 smaller boilers installed in industrial enterprises and residential areas. By the 21st century, over 80% of the region's inhabitants had switched to using natural gas for heating their homes, marking a significant step towards reducing air pollution levels. the National Environmental Protection Agency intervened directly, commencing the closure of inefficient factories and enterprises that released excessive amounts of harmful substances into the atmosphere. Furthermore, the largest industrial facilities were mandated to install special sulfur scrubbers designed to reduce emissions of sulfurous compounds and other pollutants. These measures were part of a broader program to restructure the region's industrial sector, encompassing stricter emission standards and incentives for transitioning to more environmentally sound technologies. By 2010, some media outlets hailed the area as a model of successful ecological restoration, noting significant progress in reducing pollution levels and improving air quality. However, behind the resounding pronouncements and exaggerated presentations lay a troubling reality. Many experts cautioned that the progress achieved, despite its impressive metrics, remained highly vulnerable and required constant monitoring and additional efforts to sustain the results. Unfortunately, in 2008, the central government harshly criticized local authorities for failing to fully meet established pollution control targets. And the following year, in 2019, the city once again ranked among the most polluted in the country, occupying last place in air quality among more than 160 cities in China. These renewed waves of criticism compelled local administrations to adopt even more radical measures, including the introduction of additional restrictions on industrial enterprises to reduce harmful emissions. Yet, despite all efforts, these environmental problems have become an integral part of daily life for many residents, inflicting physical, ecological, and psychological damage that is difficult to remedy. All of these events are reminiscent of the situation that unfolded in Chernobyl, Ukraine, where on April 26, 1986, an explosion occurred at one of the reactors of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. This accident released an enormous quantity of radioactive substances into the atmosphere, which spread across the territories of Belarus, 14 regions of Ukraine, and 19 regions of Russia. The consequences of this catastrophe affected over 9,880,000 acres of forest land in Central Europe, transforming once picturesque and vibrant green landscapes into radioactive zones hazardous to human life and health. In the initial stages of the disaster's aftermath, authorities focused their efforts on limiting human contact with contaminated areas, particularly agricultural lands, to prevent the spread of radiation and safeguard public health. Simultaneously, forests were largely overlooked, despite repeated warnings from scientific institutions regarding the long-term risks associated with the contamination of forest ecosystems. During the first few years following the accident, minimal efforts were made to clean or decontaminate forest areas, particularly noticeable in Belarus, where radioactive forests cover nearly 10% of the country's total area. These forgotten and abandoned forest lands continue to pose a constant threat as radiation persists within them and continues to permeate. Continuous measurements of radiation levels near the exclusion zone have become an integral part of the work of specialists seeking to understand and mitigate the potential hazards associated with activities in forest areas located near the site of the Chernobyl disaster. These scientists and experts tirelessly seek new methods and technologies to minimize the negative impact of radiation on the environment and human health. Interestingly, the forests surrounding the zone play a dual role. On one hand, they act as natural filters, helping to contain the spread of radioactive particles, preventing their further penetration into ecosystems and populated areas. On the other hand, they remain a potential, hidden, and silent threat. These expanses of tree cover serve as a natural barrier, capturing a significant portion of the radioactive emissions resulting from the tragic explosion at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in 1986. According to expert estimates, over 80% of radioactive substances, such as cesium, strontium, and plutonium, were absorbed by the forests, which acted as a kind of giant natural absorber. Once inside the forest ecosystems, radioactive elements began to circulate through the biological cycles of the trees. They penetrated the soil, became incorporated into young vegetation, resulting in a closed cycle in which hazardous substances continue to circulate and inflict harm. These forest lands act as natural biofilters, slowing the rate of radiation spread, but simultaneously creating a serious threat. Under certain circumstances, such as forest fires, pest infestations, or disease outbreaks, the accumulated radioactive particles can be released back into the air and soil, causing dangerous consequences. Therefore, authorities and specialists maintain strict control over these territories to prevent a recurrence of the radiation threat and avoid the emergence of new foci of contamination. The damage inflicted on these forests has not only affected the plant life. Animals inhabiting these forest lands have also undergone physiological changes, and disease rates among them have risen sharply. There has been an increase in diseases such as tick-borne encephalitis and tularemia, which are considered rare and dangerous to human health. The collection of mushrooms, berries, and other wild foods in these zones is particularly concerning, as it continues to pose a serious health risk. Although many residents face economic hardship and poverty, they have little choice but to engage in gathering activities, especially in Belarus, where people continue to venture into the forests for mushrooms, berries, and game, despite constant warnings about potential dangers. Studies conducted by the Forest Institute of Belarus and the Gomel Institute of Radiation Medicine confirm that the radiation burden from forest products is twice as high as that of agricultural products. In particular, in the Gomel region, located in southern Belarus, over 40% of internal radiation exposure comes from food collected in the forests. Areas where soil and climatic conditions promote strong radiation retention are particularly dangerous. Mushrooms, berries, and wild game collected there can contain up to 5 times more radioactive cesium than ordinary foods. For many rural families, this has become a daily reality, as such products form the basis of their diet, despite the devastating radioactive price. In Russia, the situation in the city of Dzerzhinsk is even more dire. For over a decade, this city, hidden in the industrial depths of the country's western region, has remained a silent witness to tragedy and its aftermath. Once a center of Soviet industry engaged in the production of chemical weapons, it subsequently transformed into a vast dumping ground for toxic waste. Between 1930 and 1998, approximately 300,000 tons of chemical waste were disposed of in the vicinity of Dzerzhinsk, including highly hazardous substances such as dioxins, lead, and various organic compounds. For many years, a catastrophic ecological tragedy unfolded in the city of Dzerzhinsk, leaving an indelible mark on the lives of its residents and the surrounding nature. Over many years, local industrialists, driven solely by self-interest, discharged hazardous waste and chemical compounds directly into bodies of water, disregarding the subsequent spread of toxins. Instead of being properly neutralized or isolated, these wastes seeped deep into the soil, penetrated underground aquifers, and spread throughout the area. This entire process occurred without any protective mechanisms or attempts to minimize harm. Factories operated under conditions of extreme secrecy, concealing their technological processes and environmental consequences. In those years, no regulatory laws existed governing environmental protection issues. The priority for enterprises was simply to increase production volumes, not to care for human health or preserve nature. Thus, for decades, toxic substances leaked into the ground unimpeded, and water saturated with hazardous compounds quietly, imperceptibly, infiltrated underground aquifers. After several factories were shut down, samples of groundwater were taken, and the results shocked everyone. The concentration of hazardous chemical substances was 17 million times higher than permissible levels. This means that the level of toxins in the water exceeded established sanitary standards by millions of times, posing a threat to public health. However, despite these appalling figures, many residents of the city still use this water every day for cooking, drinking, and personal hygiene. For them, this water has become nothing less than a source of constant exposure to chemical waste, and the price of this exposure is catastrophic. In the 21st century, in the 2000s, the mortality rate in Dzerzhinsk was 260% higher than the birth rate, a direct consequence of the ecological disaster. The average life expectancy for men fell to 42 years, and for women barely exceeded 47, significantly lower than the national average. Families living in these conditions live in the constant shadow of invisible poisons. Their homes and surroundings are saturated with harmful substances,